On a blustery day in November 1891, 10 electrical workers from around the country meet at Stoley's Dance Hall in the poor side of St. Louis, Missouri. Their goal? To bring about a better life for those in their trade. A man by the name of Henry Miller is leading the discussion.
So Henry Miller and the rest of the founding fathers realized that if we were ever going to have any structure or any power, that we needed to form a national brotherhood of electrical workers.
After several hours of rigorous debate, the 10 electrical workers agree on a constitution, and the National Brotherhood of Electrical Workers is born. For more than 120 years, the Brotherhood has stood the test of time through 2 world wars, the Great Depression, internal disputes, and hostile clashes with the government.
For the last 100 years, we have been a progressive organization that has always been willing to try something new, to grow, and to improve the lives of our members.
When the IBEW opened its doors, electricity was a luxury, not a necessity.
As in the early days, this was something that only the wealthy had access to.
Times have changed. Where once it was used primarily for science and industry, today electricity is part of our everyday lives. It is everywhere. It powers our computers, elevators, heaters, and everyday devices. It starts our cars, warms our coffee, refrigerates our food, delivers our news, and brightens our day. Hospitals, trains, airplanes, and factories. The world as we know it would not exist without electricity.
Luckily, we belong to a union that has been at the forefront of making that miracle available to everybody on a day-to-day basis.
The stewards of this vital energy are the brave men and women of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW. Today we celebrate the centennial anniversary of IBEW Local 46. With a population of over 80,000 people, Seattle is bustling at the turn of the century. In 1901, 2 days before Christmas, the IBEW Local 217, eventually changed to Local 46, is established in Seattle. The charter comes on the heels of opportunity. IBEW wiremen are instrumental in rebuilding the city after the Great Seattle Fire of 1889. One of the first big accomplishments is the completion of the 14-story Alaska building at 2nd and Cherry.
And I think that the Alaska building, which was, I think it's described as a building in the sky, was really the first, it was the first high-rise in Seattle.
Local 217 represents electricians throughout Seattle from 1901 until 1914, although the local becomes defunct in the eyes of the IBEW by the year 1909. But tensions rise between the line side of the union and the wiremen, and the IBEW calls for a split.
I think it's an inside-outside issue where there was some hard feelings about elections. There was hard feelings about a treasurer who had been basically kicked out of office, and also there's some evidence that some employers wanted to wreck this fledgling electrical workers unions.
The division is known as the Reed-Murphy split, named after the officers elected by the seating faction.
And the National AFL made the effort to work with both sides. They tried to sort of bring both sides together and work out some kind of compromise. That didn't work. But eventually, Samuel Gompers, the president, they eventually recognized the original IBEW, which was President McNulty, and then a court ruled that the seceding factions convention was illegal, and that sort of sealed it for everyone. All the locals in Washington State, as far as I know, were actually, like our local, they were part of the seceding faction.
There are other reasons for conflict. In 1909, 12,000 trade unionists marched through downtown Seattle on Labor Day to protest the Alaska Yukon Pacific Exposition Company and its open shop policy for the construction of the site at the University of Washington.
The Labor Council took this position of boycotting the event because not everybody on the site was union. There was the exposition had this open shop policy, and the Labor Council took this pretty hard position that they were going to boycott it.
Despite the constant battles, Local 217 survives. On February 27, 1911, The union adopts bylaws under Work Rule 11 that no member is to work on Labor Day under any circumstances.
That was Work Rule number 11. And so we know that members, as they went along, made these work rules. And by sticking together, by the solidarity, they enforced those work rules.
This is a bold move because in 1911, there are no labor laws. Solidarity between members holds the union together.
And back then there was no contract, so it really was a case of solidarity that people decided that they were gonna, this is our wage, this is what we work for, and if you want us to work for that rate, that's great, but we're not working for any less.
Though Local 217 is not affiliated with the IBEW from 1909 to April 1914, it functions like any other local union. In 1914, it mysteriously decides to change its name from Local 217 to Local 46.
So Local 217 changed to Local 46, and we don't know why. There's nothing in the minutes. The International has no information on this. And the only reason that I can surmise why 217 became Local 46 was because it was a lower number.
It's not easy being a union member in those years. The risks are great, the rewards limited.
You're going to go to work tomorrow. And I says, okay. And he says, here's the dispatch. You got to go down to Local 46 and join the union. I says, not a problem with me. I picked up the dispatch, I walked out of there, and I came down to Local 46 and joined 46. Local 46. So that's how I started my union career.
So I've seen unions around my family growing up. They were all represented, by the government or Boeing or, like I said, the laborers, the Teamsters. So I got a good taste of what union was about.
I was always very strong union and tried to protect our interest on the job, which was hard to do.
At anything I'd say get in a trade with a union.
I grew up union. I have to say I grew up union.
I was brought up in the union, so I was at all the meetings and stuff.
And I remembered working non-union before, and it was pretty nasty. You didn't have any rights at all, and I began to become aware of rights that we had as workers.
After talking to several of the people who worked for different trades, I would have to say that most of them directed me to the electrical industry. If I was going to do it again, I would probably recommend this industry.
Training program now is 5 years. I don't know if I'd make it now if I had to go through the program now. The things that they have to learn, and they're in school, they're studying for that whole 5 years.
If there's something nasty and dirty to do or a ditch to dig, the apprentice is going to be right in there learning a trade.
They told me they were going to send a mouse through the conduit and that they wanted me to stand there and watch for this mouse to come out. Now, I pictured a mouse with a string tied around his tail that they were going to shove into this pipe, and it was going to run out the other end at me. About the time I stepped back from the hole, this column of water, about 4 inches around, come up through there, and it went clear up to the ceiling. That all happened within the first week.
And he said, with your experience, you can get accepted. They're looking for women. So I came down to 46 and applied and got accepted.
The stereotype, that this is men's work and that only men can do this work well is outmoded. Women make incredibly successful journeyman electricians. And the issue today is, how are we going to get more women to apply? How are we going to get more women to look at apprenticeship and see a career for themselves?
Nobody knew. Nobody had a clue of how they were supposed to act, how they were supposed to talk, if they could swear in front of me. I didn't know.
I had a language problem too,
Yeah.
And but I learned a lot. I learned how to swear from the electricians.
Nowadays, the apprenticeships turn out very good people.
Money went up quickly.
Right.
Every 6 months you get a raise. So it only took me like a year and a half to get to pass what I was making in the office.
And anytime I was working with apprentices, maybe they were my helper, and they're called pimps. We call them pimps, our helpers, and the girls are called pimpettes. Nancy Mason, she gets a big kick out of that because she was working with me one time and she says, hey, I always remember I was your pin pet.
Well, yeah, that was a big thing with me. I was a journeyman because I worked really hard for that title. Right. And that was the title.
Organizing culture started here in Local 46 pretty much before anywhere else in the United States in the 80s. There were still a lot of struggles and we had a long way to go.
We needed to reach out to unrepresented workers and we needed to educate our own members. We needed to reinforce the fact that we're all in it together and we'll all go down together if we don't live together.
We can't have what we have if we don't organize.
They really didn't understand. You know, they knew we were IBEW, we were a union, but they really didn't understand how we came to where we are.
I'm totally for organizing. And I think the organizers is doing a great job.
There's more to being in the union than just paying your dues.
Oh, the biggest question we get from is, well, we don't have to pay any union dues. And that was always such a strange answer because they didn't realize what they were missing by the benefits that you get from paying the union dues.
The non-union person is doing more harm out there working non-union below the labor rate than if they're in here. If they're in here, they'll eventually come around. They'll get it because it's real. It's not fake. They'll get it and they're here to get it. If they're out there, they're not going to get it and they're going to be constantly hurting us.
And we tried to tell them, hey, you can make a better living if you join the union.
Organize everybody in the industry as the objectives of the IBEW Constitution say. Our first objective is very clear, organize all.
You got laid, you got drunk, you got in a fight. Any two of the three. And if you didn't get at least two, you were a wimp.
You know, if you could yell the loudest and put the business manager and the staff down the most, that identified you as being a bang-up, good brother, good union man.
It was the trying times. Some of the reps were packing guns.
They were really strong union. They were Democrats and they were unions. And if you weren't one or the other, I think they'd take you out and drown you.
In the first days, they'd can you on the spot for saying safety. You don't say anything about safety, you just put up with the goddamn conditions.
We achieved all the safety items we have today is because of unions.
To workers out on the job, they have a right. If they see something unsafe, they have a right to say something about it.
But I always felt that in most all cases, Local 46 had some pretty good heads. And the men that were leading negotiating teams and working did a good job.
I think the people that work here generally, and particularly the business manager, have a thankless job. It's like being a politician, you know, you're darned if you do and darned if you don't.
As one business manager told me a long time ago, if everybody's happy, you're probably screwing up.
If you want to do real work with the skilled people, you go union.
You should have fun in your work too.
Right, no, I think so.
And I think there's some really neat people in the job that you can have fun with and still earn your money. You should enjoy working with the people that you work with every day.
But we can do the work. We've proven ourselves, and I am very optimistic that we'll never go backwards again.
And I think that's going to be the key, is to keep our image within the public high. In other words, you know what you're getting when you hire a union electrician versus a non-union electrician.
What I've found working in the yards and in construction, if we stick together, we can make it happen.
For the last 100 years, IBEW Local 46 has been on the forefront of workers' rights.
I deserve to make ends meet, and my daughter deserves to have a better life.
Battling a hostile government. And engaging in social justice issues that directly affect our members and families.
We are the union! We are the union! Mighty, mighty union! Mighty, mighty union!
We have had struggles both internal.
We had a business rep get hit in the mouth.
Our meetings back in those days, sometimes there were fist fights that went on.
And external.
Nowadays, we have our government against us at all levels.
I would say since 1947, the government has done nothing for workers in this country.
But in the end, we are more than wages and benefits.
I'm here today because I have a good job and a union who supports me, and I'm happy to be here. Happy MLK Day!
We're a brotherhood and sisterhood. Despite the roller coaster up and downs of the past 100 years, Local 46 has kept its head held high.
What we have is people, and people are actually the strength of the union.
It's good to me. The electrical trades, my union.
While most unions have shrunk in the last 30 years, Local 46 has had steady growth and continues to innovate.
I am very optimistic about the labor movement.
We're the best in the business.
Look at what we've accomplished and how we got here.
Finding what you like to do and doing it well is the hallmark of a successful life.
The world as we know it runs on electricity, and we, the IBEW and Local 46, are here to stay.